You're listening to the Dead Padawan Society, a science fiction and fantasy podcast celebrating the ideas, mythologies, and truths in iconic works of sci-fi. I'm your host, Nick Dennis, and I'm joined by my friend,
Brett Inman.
Brett, we are jumping back into a discussion about Glass, the new movie from M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah, I hated to break you up last time, but it was getting really long.
Well,
and I think we still have a lot to talk about.
There's a lot to say on this movie. There's a lot to argue about, and we didn't want to leave anything off because there's a lot of detail in these films and a lot of things, and there's a lot of critiques as well. So we didn't want to leave anything off, so we're going to jump back in that here in just a minute.
One of the things I'm most excited to talk about today is the in-universe criticisms that have been brought up. I think that'll be interesting.
Yeah, because there's a lot of talk out there about things in this movie break the universe, that it no longer makes sense and it's not as cohesive as what people wanted it to be. And there's a lot of arguments out there, and we'll jump into that in just a second. But before we do, just a little something fun. If you had, going into this universe, we've talked about superpowers before, and if you had a superpower...
I would become a supervillain using some form of mind control to get anything I wanted.
Right,
yes.
So similar to Mr. Glass.
Except I would control people. I want to puppeteer, but I would be the puppet master. That would be my,
So dial that back 1,000, and if you had to have a unbreakable universe power, something that you have and it makes you kind of unique or super, but it's not noticeable to even maybe yourself and definitely not the public around you, what would it be?
Have you watched any X-Files?
Yeah.
Okay, in the first season or first 2 seasons, there's a character introduced, sort of one of the recurring monsters of the week, Tooms.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the guy who...
Victor Tooms?
Possibly, yeah. Who stretches and is super...
He can fit into any little crack.
I think having the extreme form of like double jointedness and the ability to, contort and basically extreme contortionist ability. Yeah. I think that would be really interesting. So then you could even do, what you've seen in the Ocean's movies where they hire a gymnast to be able to do some of the more intricate things or slip down into places where none of the other team members can go. I think that would be an interesting, again. So I would just end up being a thief again. So I know,
I was like, you're heading down the bad road again.
Yeah, I don't know. I could break into criminal organizations and I could steal documentation from the government that way and reveal it so that we could all be free from our captors.
Yeah, but then you got to go live in Russia.
That's true.
And you can never come back to the U.S.
Well, and inevitably there'd be a lot of really negative spin on what I was doing.
Absolutely.
I'd be treated like I'm some kind of criminal.
Like
even
you're
though
a traitor.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not a traitor. What about you?
So there's a couple different things that I think maybe would fit in this universe. I really like the idea of invisibility. If you could turn yourself invisible.
But how does that work in this universe?
Okay, so again...
Because that would be one that you would really have to sell me on.
Right. So again, dialing it back 1,000, but basically having the ability to camouflage yourself in any environment. Basically, almost like a Batman, he knows how to disappear into his surroundings. And there's people who are like that they are still, and they find a way to just kind of blend in. That would be, and that maybe that's kind of like a secret agent. Yeah. Not FBI or something like that.
You would have the most nondescript face possible, so that whenever people look at you, they don't even register your features.
Right. Yeah. Something that just a person who just always blends in anywhere, so no one ever suspects them. I could get around really easy. But the other thing I think would be fun and also incredibly practical. People who are ambidextrous. Yeah. Like I've always thought that is awesome. Someone who can write or draw with both hands. And so I don't know what all 4 of your members would be. But if I could type, write, draw with both hands and my feet.
So you would be Beast.
Yeah, but not like so extreme that you're climbing up walls and
Yeah,
doing
you're
crazy,
just using it
crazy
for
jumps.
like mundane things.
Yeah, exactly.
You're playing both controllers in a 2-player game.
Absolutely. Or I'm doing work with my hands and then playing with a controller, playing video games with my feet.
Yeah. You know what would be sad?
Plus, you always need an extra hand.
Yeah,
like
that's true.
Like
that's
when you're carrying groceries or something in, it would just be super helpful if you could. Also
and it would be
hold
nice
stuff
if
with
your feet could do something besides just sit there and look stupid all day. You know, it's like, come on, carry your weight.
Other than carrying my weight.
Other than carrying my weight. Yes.
Well, I think those should be great additions to this universe.
And the sad thing is, in the Unbreakable universe, these still would be things that would cause the organization to come after us. I feel like the Clover Society would be like, we've got to shut this guy down who uses his feet so well.
We can't have gods among us. Well, on that note, let's jump back into this discussion.
Yeah, do you want to give just a quick recap on what this work is?
Yeah, so obviously, if you guys listen to the first episode, we're talking about M. Night Shyamalan's Glass. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It is the sequel to both Split and Unbreakable. If you haven't seen those, check them out. It's a superhero comic book world that is basically not knowing that it is, and all the powers are very light. And these characters are trying to figure out who they are within this world.
Yeah, and what I found really interesting, and again, going back into our discussion today, you and I both had a very different reaction than the critics, by and large, have had. The critical reaction has been surprisingly negative to this film, and so we've sort of been addressing our take on that. Is the critical reaction right? And if not, how does our perspective kind of...
Mm-hmm. And this film within his filmography is very different than most, because most of his previous works align both with critics and audience, that they're close in tomato meter score, but this one is very divisive. You got your critics in the 30% range and your audience in the 70 to 80% range. So that being so big, it makes for interesting discussion with people of what is their take on this and how do they enjoy it, how do they view it, what do they think the message is, and then we'll be getting specifically into that later. Yeah.
So what's the next criticism that you looked into based on this film?
I've heard criticisms of just give them, do they have powers or they don't have powers? And this is getting into the end universe criticism, because I've heard from some people being like, even if you tell me right now, and at the end of this movie, it's like, they really do have powers. I've heard people being like, yeah, but do they really? Like, one guy can run like a dog and can punch hard. Another guy can punch hard and bend a bar, and one guy has a really smart brain. Like, is that really superpowers? How do you respond to that? Because I kind of see that. I mean, one guy can be broken just by getting punched, and one guy's kryptonite is too much water.
Yeah, well, M. Night Shyamalan hates water. I think that's been established pretty...
Yeah, there's fan theories that he is actually an alien. He's one of the aliens that has morphed into a human.
He's trying to encourage us to get rid of all of our water so that they can come invade. That's interesting. I mean, one of the things I like that the powers are so stripped down... The videos that were captured at the end wouldn't show this, but I feel like we're led to believe, at least, that David's like premonition ability is real. So I feel like in universe, like there's that one that was interesting.
Yeah, that is fantastical, because even though she tries to explain it away, Staple at the end holds out her hand, and there's just...
Which to me affirms that, like, it's real. Like, that's what that is.
Right, that she is recognizing, saying, yes, you do have this power. And, I mean, there's things in all of those flashes. I mean, maybe you can make the argument that he's forming almost like Sherlock forms the scene in his head based off very little stuff that, oh, I know exactly who you are and what you do based on these little things. I mean, he's being drowned by a couple muscle guys, and then the person who tried to convince him that he wasn't a hero comes over, or wasn't super, comes over to him.
And I mean, like, in that situation, he didn't get the premonition until he made physical contact. Like,
but I would say somebody who argues against that is just, that's him doing his deductive, like that premonition is just him in his like Sherlock mind palace, doing his deductive reasoning really fast.
Let's be real.
The way making this picture.
The way Sherlock has been interpreted in its most recent iterations is a superpower.
It is a superpower. That is very true. That is very true.
Even the way they shoot it, it reminds me of the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man, where he first realizes he has spider senses, and it's all like the camera's all like zooming around to different things. That's exactly what they do in like Sherlock Holmes, where it's like, oh, but if you look over here, and then it's over this, and like the camera's all whipping and zooming in and changing focus, and it's. I think that's a legitimate superpower.
Well, like Glass, my superpower is my mind.
Yeah,
that's Sherlock right there.
I mean, that's Batman too.
That is true. Yeah.
So, I mean, anybody who wants to complain about this, if you admit Batman to the canon of superheroes, then...
Yeah, there are plenty of heroes. I mean, everyone in Batman, all the Bat family, don't have powers. No. They're just regular people who fight crime. And so, by that criteria alone, these are fine to be superhero characters.
Yeah.
Even if they're just really strong, normal people... They're taking it and using it to be heroes.
Do you think there were any other characters in the film that had superpowers? Because I feel like that would be a place where you might be able to make a case. Because, super mental abilities is what Elijah demonstrates. And the other two basically have physical abilities, with the exception of you could say David maybe has some kind of mental, or pseudo spiritual ability. Well,
I've already put forward that Sniper Boy with the lucky clover is their Deadshot is their.
See, I'm pretty sure he's just a regular sniper.
No, he's just regular.
But let's be honest.
That's what I want to think.
Hawkeye's not even a real superhero either. It's like, what are you? I guess we can bring Hawkeye too.
Don't knock it until you see Ronan. But. I would also say I really think they were trying to make a statement with Anya Taylor-Joy's character in both Split and this film. I truly believe she has powers.
So that's Casey, the girl
Casey. I can never remember her name. I think because twice in this movie she makes physical contact with the Horde, and when she does it, she is specifically trying to grab him on his arm both times. And when that happens, his countenance changes and even personality switches over. And I truly believe that she has some sort of power of manipulation in order to get what she wants. There's characters like that in comics. You've got, I think there's an X-Men character that can do that. I thinking Domino, but Domino is Lucky. But I think there's an X character who can make you do what they want to do, and so that's a established comic book characteristic. That, and people have said that she's like an empath as well, so she can through that physical touch can make you like see things how she sees them, and makes you feel things as she feels them almost, and in that way can manipulate you to see it from her point of view. I would not be surprised if she is.
Her character also has an alliterative name. She is Casey Cook, not unlike David Dunn or Peter Parker or Bruce Banner.
That is true, which is a hero.
It is.
Heroes have the alliterated names. I did not realize that. Casey Cook. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. She's definitely got powers.
There was a point in the movie where I was wondering if Elijah's mom was going to be revealed to have some kind of... Like, I even wondered if she maybe... Like, especially as he was dying, I was expecting somebody to heal him. And so I'm like, oh, I wonder if she has like healing abilities.
Oh,
And
that she could like set his broken bones whenever
that was
they
the only reason that he was even able to survive,
as long as he did,
because of her presence. So I don't think that's true, but that'd be an interesting thing for somebody to go back on. I mean, the tilt-a-whirl scene that was shot for
a deleted scene from Unbreakable.
He gets away from his mom, and that's whenever he breaks all his bones.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, it could just be that mothers generally are protective, and so they're not going to allow their child to come to harm. That's a thing too. But
right. Okay, so jumping off the powers. So in this universe, if powers aren't spectacular, right? If they're not these, people can't fly, people can't shoot laser beams out of their eyes. If they're not spectacular like that, why does a secret society feel the need to keep them hidden?
It's the Lex Luthor thing. Lex fights against Superman because of what that could mean for humanity. That if there
shouldn't be a Superman.
Exactly. So for me, I get it. Now, they're fighting a more mundane enemy, except who knows how many metahumans they've been putting down too. I mean, it could be, because there's also the X universe approach where what if the mutants, are actually replacing humans? Like, what if this is the next step in evolution and they're gradually...
Right, yeah, maybe this round of them aren't super strong or have crazy powers, but them being allowed to, I don't even know, like mate together or something like that, get together to where their powers exponentially grow through.
Yeah, well, and
through that.
It could eventually, there could come a point where there are more metahumans than there are humans, normies. And so I think that's a legitimate fear. I mean, that's a real world fear where, what if too many people immigrate to our country? Then there could be more of them than there are of us. That's a real world fear. And I mean, people actively organize to fight against that. So I think if this is a real thing, that makes total sense to me that there would be, now that they would be a secret organization. I don't know. But
I guess it's necessary for them to be a secret organization if they're trying to keep the existence of these people secret as well.
Yeah.
Which
you would think if it would get out, that's the only thing that's a little hard, how do you suppress?
Well, see, that leads me into another criticism of why take the road of convincing all of these people that they aren't super, that they don't have powers. Why go through all the effort of trying to convince them of that when you could just kill them? Like, why wouldn't the secret society just go around taking out any threats and not worry about going through the hassle of that? Which I think I have an answer for.
Yeah, because that's an interesting question. I hadn't really... I mean, once you get to the end of the movie, you do sort of feel that way. It's like, if they can just murder them, why didn't they just murder them?
Right. They ended up in a very public place doing so. So why wouldn't you just get them in a cell and take them out there and then put in a body bag, carry them out at night, get rid of the body and do it that way?
Yeah, that seems like a reasonable criticism to me.
I think that I think for two reasons why they don't do that, and I think they're explained in the movie itself. Because when you see Staple go in front of the group and talk to them, she specifically talks about her method that she's employing with these three is a humane one. That she is in this group saying this is a humane treatment of convincing, it's working to convince them that they that they are human, that none of it is real. They don't want to use the machine, as they called it, which was the brain laser thing, because I guess that's not as humane of a way. Maybe that makes them vegetables, basically, which ruins the rest of their life. And so I think this secret society doesn't think it's evil. I think they believe they are heroes for keeping the status quo, and because they they don't believe themselves to be evil, that they also care for life, even the life of the supers. So they don't want to just go around killing and murdering them, because they have some sort of skewed moral code, but they still are like, we don't kill people. We just don't want these people believing that they can do all of these crazy things, because that will throw the world into chaos. So find humane ways of convincing them or discrediting them. Like, I think the reason why they haven't messed with Elijah till now is because he was in the mental hospital. He had tried to break out a couple times, but those were foiled. And everyone saw him as a crackpot.
Yeah.
Like, the whole world is like, he's a insane terrorist guy who blew up all of these and derailed trains. And so they're like, he's just a weirdo. He's not a mastermind and has super, brain abilities. He's just crazy. And so society as a whole had discounted him and he's not a threat anymore because he's in a cage. And so there's no need for them to step in and mess with that.
Yeah.
If they don't
he's not going to be
to.
propagating even his idea that there are heroes if he's
right. Well, because he's a mastermind, and so he's not stupid enough to just be saying all of those things that people would think are crazy, and because then people would be like, look at this loon, like saying there's all these people, like, don't believe him.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
Yeah, now there is one thing that would go against this, which is the criticism of, why did this Clover Society not get to David Dunn sooner? Because he's been out and about in Philly doing superhero stuff for ever since Unbreakable, possibly. I don't know if the movie establishes that he's been doing this stuff all the way since then, or has it just been a more recent, like, him and his son decided to do the vigilante thing together?
I think it's hard to say based on what the movie shows. It definitely is not something like, this case is not the first thing that he's done.
Right, because he's getting...
Well, and even in the film, like, there are those, like, thugs on the street who are, making YouTube videos of, like, punching people out, and he goes and stops them.
Right, but is that... Because when he gets back to his son and is like, oh, there's more pings on you, there's people calling you this now and stuff, which sounds to me like him doing this is relatively still new to Philadelphia. Like, this is...
he would have an established name.
Yeah, because it's making news. Like, oh, there's been another sighting of this guy recently. To me, that sounds like this is... The internet is just now grabbing onto... to this. So maybe he's kept a lower profile.
How many years have there been in between the two?
I mean, I don't know in universe, but it's been 19 years since Unbreakable. So face-wise, in Bruce Willis's face, that amount of time has passed.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
But maybe that society, like, he wasn't doing enough to warrant them stepping in. Maybe the Horde coming out and killing girls, meaning Dunn stepping in and taking him on. Maybe they felt like now's the time to wrangle all of these, and they're throw them in together with Elijah and discredit them all as being crazies.
Yeah, it is odd that organization didn't do it. Maybe it's a Batman and the Joker kind of thing, where they haven't intervened because there was just one operating, like, it's a small threat, because presumably this organization is operating worldwide. So, I mean, if there are other more significant issues, they're going to take care of that. Whereas this, you could write it off as just a dude doing a thing, but then you get two of them operating in the same place, and it now is... it comes to a fight that actually did, break out onto the street and would have presumably continued between these two. Like, it starts to actually become a more public and visible thing. Whereas, again, he's tiptoeing around. He's a tiptoe man. He's, the...
Yeah. Well, and even their fight, like their first fight, is in a warehouse where there's no one around, but then they have the cops there as they're fighting, and she has the lights ready for him. So it's almost like, let's stop them here in this industrial district before they go out more people see him.
Yeah, which I wonder if those are even cops by the end of the movie.
Oh, yeah. They're just their guys dressed as cops. Yeah. And you get the sense that she's working. At first, you believe that she's working within, government structures. She's there. She has 3 days to treat them, which you think that's almost like a government mandate. We're going to allow you 3 days with these people, and then we're locking away the key. But you realize that's really what her organization, the timeline they've given her to treat before using the machine.
Yeah, I would be interested. I mean, this is one of those things that, I can see this as a question to ask about the Unbreakable universe. But, you almost wonder if this organization's been doing this for as long as they have. Is there a threshold? Again, do supers exponentially grow in an area as, more and more of them come to light?
Well, I mean, she said even in the film that she's like, when one of you pop up, it's oftentimes that another will pop up to counter it. And so, again, the Horde, this Horde guy is new on the scene, and how crazy he is from the get, taking girls and eating them. Yeah. Maybe they were like, we don't want to see what pops up to counter him. Like, we got to step in now.
If your theory about Casey Cook is correct, something has already popped up.
Oh, yeah. And maybe they haven't recognized that.
Yeah, or maybe they have recognized that.
Yeah, it seemed like Staple realized...
What are the extent of her abilities? Like, who is... Yeah.
Yeah, she may have already been evaluating Casey in that time.
Why did Casey survive this? How did... Yeah.
Right. How does she survive this when she allows her to be in that meeting? She sees how she can tame him, and she's using her as a tool right then, but I wouldn't doubt that she's keeping a close eye on her of maybe this is another one here. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that at all.
But then, I mean, even as the end of the movie suggests, seeing real superheroics is going to lead other people to come forward when otherwise, I mean, and even if you think about it, like if you're out on the street and you see something that is wrong, there's as much chance of you like kind of turning a blind eye to it and going the other way as there is of you like stepping up and intervening. So if that kind of attitude begins to grow, then you may end up with more people who are, even though they, have an ability to do something or think they might, previously they would be like, no, I'm not going to do that. And instead now they have these examples that they can follow.
Yeah, so that is another... Okay, let's get into that as well. So there's the argument of the video at the end. All right, so So Glass's end game is making this video of these people doing exceptional things, broadcasting it to the world as a, yes, we exist. If you're, the idea is if you're out there as well and you see this, and now you will believe as well. But there's the criticism of it's just a video of people doing some slightly exceptional things. Like, we get that on the internet all the time. There's thousands of videos of people are awesome. Check out these 10 crazy things people can do. And so there's the argument of this would be a viral video of, oh, look at this kind of cool thing someone can do, and it would be viral and then forgotten, or it would be seen as this is a hoax, like they've edited this and put it together. He's not really bending bars, that's rubber, and all this is choreographed and fake.
Yeah, I've heard that, and even in the theater I definitely thought that a little bit. I'm like, wait, they're just using videos to try to convince people? Like, I'm a fan of Captain Disillusionment on YouTube, and his whole shtick is he'll look at the latest viral video and he'll point out how it's just a special effect, how there are hidden cuts, or how they're using some like simple 3D modeling or things like that. And That's like his whole thing.
So that people in those are not doing what you think they're doing.
Yeah. It's like, oh, this is all fake. Or there was, I want to say one of his earliest ones that I saw, there was a video that was going around of these guys doing tricks with sunglasses where they'd like flip them and the other person would catch them on their face, and they gradually stepped it up and got more and more extreme. And he actually would just break in and like analyze, okay, how's this working? There was this viral video created as an advertisement for Windows, but it was like a sneaky advertisement for Windows where you don't really realize that's what it's doing. But it was tricks that you can do with a tape measure, and this guy was like shooting a tape measure across the room and stuff.
Was it the construction worker guy, and he'd throw it and he could always nail whatever he's trying to measure
and catch things. And that one was totally fake. And so Captain Dissolute like goes in and shows like, okay, here's where they actually replace that with a CG model. Here's where the string is being masked out, and you can kind of tell the distortions and stuff.
Oh, okay. So, anyway, that video got me. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But I was like, oh, he's a guy who can do tricks with a tape measure. Great for him.
Yeah. So there was a part of me where it's a movie, you have to check your brain. And so like I started to think that a little bit like, but you know what? I'm going to give this movie what it's saying here at the end. And so, like, at first, that was kind of my thought. And then as we were talking the other day, this was actually one of the things that we talked about. And it led me to wonder if there are shots that have been cut out of the movie that were shot for the movie. Specifically, okay, so first off, we're not just seeing, like, a superpower. We're seeing two people specifically demonstrate a number of extreme physical superpowers, bending bars, running like an animal, jumping on top of things that they shouldn't be able to, bending in, punching a van and leaving.
Yeah, beating a huge dent into a van. And flipping a car.
Flipping a car. So you've got a lot of evidence, first off. And, again, presumably all shot from, like a camera. So, yeah, people would evaluate it. But if it's real, it's presumably going to show up and turn out to be real. So that's a thing. These are, at least two of the people involved are super high profile. You have the terrorist who blew up, burned a building, crashed a train and a plane, is involved in this. Like, wait a second, isn't that guy? Because at the end of Split, people still years later remember, wasn't there that guy that they gave a name to? What was it? Oh, Mr. Glass. Yeah. So he's high profile. And then this, just 3 weeks ago, the Horde, and even, at the beginning of the film, there are another group of children that have been abducted by this monster. And so,
and I think like the cheerleaders that he abducted, I think was even the third. And so he has since that movie taken another group and, most likely massacred them.
So like these are huge high profile people, and then they're murdered. And that would have been caught on film as well. And so I wonder if at some iteration of this movie, if those death scenes were part of what was like included in that video that was being
shown on screens.
And I mean, again, that was super visceral. You see, Unbreakable, you see the protector, the overseer getting drowned to death in a puddle. Mr. Glass bleeds out on the ground. Kevin Wendell Crumb is shot. The footage from those deaths would have, to us in the audience, looked a lot like other deaths we've been seeing in the news. Yeah. And so to me, that would have been super, super visceral and would have been, so it's not just that you're watching these super people. You're watching these super people get killed in a brutal way. This is significant.
And even though it's not shown in the Glass, the film itself, the quick shots are them doing the super things. I think it's inevitable to know that those were also shown, which I would say the report given to the news by that secret organization most likely does not align with what's on the video, with how they died. Again, these are high-profile people doing extraordinary things, and then being killed, specifically in the ways that they are with the drowning. And even though the Beast has been doing horrible things, the Horde has been doing horrible things around the city. At the time he is shot, like he's standing holding a girl's like a random girl's hand and then gunned down, which would
when he's inert, like he's
right.
Why would you shoot him then?
Right, exactly. Which, people being like, yeah, we hate that guy anyway. Anyone still watching the video would be like, well, what was the reason? Why did it go down that way? Exactly.
Yeah.
It causes question. It causes doubt. It causes people to ask what is really happening and who exactly are these people, which is exactly what the Clover Society does not want.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they want to remain hidden.
Now, for me, in universe, those exist. I think they were not included in the film because I wonder actually if there wasn't a cut of this film that maybe even was screened that had shots like that in it, and that those shots were removed because of the reaction. Because in some ways,
it may be seen as very insensitive to what's actually happening in the news. Yeah.
Well, and there's even the sense that, like, why would you co-opt things like, that kind of imagery that's, largely associated with very serious real world things for this superhero movie. Like,
right.
And so I could see a lot of people reacting very negatively. And even like if you're going to watch that, you just watched them die already.
Right. It
turn
did
that
just happen.
Back up and then to see it even in a more graphic and kind of like ugly way. Because at least, whatever you say, the way that those scenes were shot in the movie was tasteful, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, because
they're a little more subjective. They're you're not watching it from a stark wide angle.
Yeah, you're mostly watching it from like their faces and their how they're spending their final moment. Yeah, and their loved ones being close by.
And so for me, like those shots, if they made it to a cut of the film, there probably was somebody who reasonably said,
maybe not.
Maybe let's leave those out.
Yeah, I think I would have liked it if at the very end where you see that big news report screen, like if across the bottom it just had like a headline of something like "Deaths in Question" or something, or something
which
like
could
that.
Have been there. That was so fast that I didn't even.
Yeah, I would need a rewatch to see if there is anything like that in there, because there possibly could be. Which it's funny because we say, don't Shyamalan, don't hold everyone's hand in it, but then at the end we're like, we want a little bit more defined on that. But yeah, I could easily see that that video should have more impact than what I think some critics are saying that it would. Yeah. That it's like, oh, it's just a silly video, people would disregard it. I don't, with the circumstances surrounding this event, these high profile people, like what you had said, I think it would call a lot of things into question. And so, yeah, I definitely think. So a couple little things here before we wrap it up. So there's very little build up to the sidekicks taking down the Clover Society at the end. Like it just kind of they get the email attachment and it happens.
I would say that even plays into there is a legitimate criticism to be made that the Clover Society come out of nowhere, and so one of the reviews that I actually watched for this, they basically compare this to the Matrix trilogy. So if you have the Matrix trilogy and you have the Unbreakable trilogy. Both of them have this big bad organization that needs to be taken down. The machines in one and the Clover Society in the other one. All of the Matrix movies are building up to taking down the machine. Like that's what all of those movies are about. Whereas this one, the big bad gets, again, there are subtle clues in the way that things are being handled in Glass that kind of nod towards, oh, maybe there's something else going on here.
Right. You at least suspect maybe Staple being nefarious beforehand.
But I mean, there are no pieces of it in the other two films. Like it is non-existent. Now we're gonna say that, and then as soon as this episode releases, there'll be some video that like unveils the
right. This is where the Clover Society was.
This person had a tattoo.
Now I've already heard speculation that M. Night Shyamalan himself,
the character that he plays,
his cameo is a part of the Clover Society, because in the first Unbreakable, he bumps in to David Dunn.
There's a way to confirm that.
Does he have the tattoo?
No. Well, does he have the tattoo? Is he in the room?
Is he in?
We see that group meet twice.
Yeah, if he's
in the room.
I would think that would have come out by now if he is in the room.
Yeah, and I haven't heard anybody say that.
I would think somebody on a rewatch would be really focused on who's in that room and would have caught him by now. But the idea is he bumped into...
I wonder if there are any other people in those rooms that appear in the other movies.
That would be
That'll
good.
be an interesting thing to...
Yeah.
That's almost like a Blu-ray freeze frame.
Right, yeah.
Sleuth.
I think you more likely in Split, definitely most likely not in Unbreakable.
I don't know. They brought back actors that we haven't seen or heard from since Unbreakable for this movie. I mean,
yeah, it's true, but he was a kid, like an adult. That would be a bit harder to do.
They'd just be older.
I mean, that's true.
Bruce Willis came back, so
yeah, and the same actress for Elijah's mom came back as well. But yeah, so M. Night Shyamalan is the theory is that he was bumping into Bruce Willis with the premonition of the drugs. That was the Clover Society sending him in to gauge if he did have
the ability,
that ability, those powers, or what he would do with somebody like him.
So had they bugged Elijah's office at that point? Like, were they already?
Yeah, maybe. But then he's in Split as
the landlord for the psychologist.
And for the psychologist. But the idea that he was keeping tabs and maybe even getting into her files to get more information on Crumb and the Horde and see what she's getting out of their sessions together. Maybe he was reconnaissance. And then in this movie, he is at Dunn's store again, and he's the one who says, "Let your dad go for a walk, man." And that walk is what gets Dunn caught by the society and put in the mental institution. So maybe he was sent there purposefully to
M. Night
push
Shyamalan
him.
has just enough hubris that could be a thing, but I hope it's not a thing.
If this theory catches fire, yeah, he'll be like, yeah, that's totally right. That's who I am. I'm a part of the society.
Again, if he's in the room, then he
yeah,
put it there.
It's confirmed.
Yeah.
But he probably doesn't have a Clover tattoo. I'm pretty sure people will be like, yeah, it's never on his hand. Because it looks like every stinking person has one.
Yeah, you have to get one. That's how you're initiated.
Yeah, you got to be in the club.
Yep.
Yeah,
so it's a prison style tattoo too. So you have to let somebody.
So the last person who got it does it to the next one, so that it's always crappy.
Yeah.
So, and finally, why were these sidekicks allowed to live?
That's one that nags at me a little bit.
Because they were
the way this organization
on the
works.
Scene.
Like, how are these people allowed to get and do what they did? I mean, I guess the way the end is edited, you don't know when Staple finds out compared to when they get the emails of the information, and the logistics of how everything happens there at the end it's cut up a lot, and so it's hard to say, maybe the organization didn't have time to know or respond before those three were able to share the information. But I think there's also why didn't they get rid of them as witnesses?
Because
they kept all the people who were in the asylum. They pushed them to the other side of the building so they wouldn't see. So
But what I guess maybe the only kickback is you do see them when they're getting their email attachments. They're all just kind of like sad and alone. I mean, Glass's mom, like he got punched by, a strong man and so that's not that's not really the Clover Society's fault, really.
Yeah.
He was punched by another bad guy, and so I think she just accepts his
that one's
fate
reasonable.
There.
You could say Anya Taylor-Joy with, he was a threat, and so they shot him. That
right.
Police do that.
But the drowning.
That one,
and you can clearly see in that scene he's like pushing those security officers, and he's freaking out and mad. But maybe they're thinking they can discredit one person. They can be like he's just gone.
Well, and if
he's gone mad because of his dad.
If he has
dying,
no evidence,
and he has no evidence, he's just pushing because he's angry that this happened. Maybe that was the thought process, but of course they didn't foresee them getting the ammunition that they they received.
They deleted it. I mean, they intentionally were
right, and they did not know he had set up that separate server. So, yeah, I mean, I can see where you can poke holes, and I mean, you can poke holes with all kinds of movies, and especially one as intricate as this. You can say if the dice, don't fall this way, or the dominoes don't fall perfectly in this order, then it all just breaks apart. And I don't know. I feel like you can poke holes like in a dam, but it still retains most of its water. Yeah.
And I would contend this isn't the best film ever made, or this film franchise isn't, but it's good. Yeah, and that's my thing, is that I definitely don't think it merits the percentage and the hate that the critics are heaping on it. Yeah. That doesn't make sense to me. Well, I think it's a good movie.
I think a part of it is people just not liking the third act of what happened with the deaths, with the different reveals and twists. Some people being like, I just don't like that.
Yeah. It's M. Night doing his twists again.
Yeah, and I feel like, because M. Night is so polarizing in his work of, this is a great film he's done, this is a terrible film he's done, that if it's not a masterpiece, then
it's the worst thing ever made.
Then we're going to be negative against it, and it deserves a low score. I
wonder too if some of the critics, even just because it's in the superhero genre and because of especially the Marvel machine, but even other, the DC franchise, that critics have had to do so many superhero movie reviews, if there isn't some fatigue on their part. Yeah, maybe. And, again, like...
Well, I would even argue that maybe even the marketing machine plays into this as well, because what have we gotten used to with normal superhero fare is that the trailers that we receive, it's like, oh, here's some delicious scenes, but we're not showing a ton of the good stuff. Marvel is very much, that's how they do their marketing now. So we're not showing you the bulk of this. We're showing you only this, so that when you get there, there's all of these surprises, and you're not going to see the final showdown. We're not going to put that in at all. Yeah. Whereas the trailers for this straight up show you the final showdown.
Absolutely. I was shocked by, because again, you go into a movie having seen the trailer and you wonder where those pieces are going to fit.
Yeah.
I was so shocked by, I feel like there was more stuff from the second and third act of the movie in the trailer than there was stuff from the first act of the movie. The first act surprised me. I'm like, what is this? I didn't see this.
Yeah. And so in that way of them in the movie being like, we're going to the building, that's where the showdown is going to be. I think maybe even there was the disappointment of, I want to see the new thing. I want to see what I haven't seen before. And so I think maybe some were disappointed that, I've already seen this fight scene in the trailers. I wanted that other showdown, but that was never where this film was going. And I wonder if there's some disappointment underneath the surface there because of how we've been conditioned with other superhero fare. Now, getting into final thoughts on this. One thing we do when we talk about movies is, what is the core? What is the message? What is the truth? What is this conveying? And I think this question is very important within this movie specifically, and because of the third act, because of people's dislike for it, because that is where I believe it is solidifying its message of what this movie is about. And some people may not think it's there, or may not agree with that message or what it's putting forward. But so again, WTF, Brett, what's the final?
Nick,
what's the final message?
Oh,
here?
that's the F.
Yes,
You alliterate like a Baptist preacher.
Well, it's WTFM, I guess. What's the final message?
It's the final message. One of the things, and I feel like this is kind of the arc that especially the Beast and David both go on, but what do you believe, and what do you choose to believe, and how does that impact what you do? I feel like is really significant in this film, and that you're largely called to question things that you've just seen. You've seen 2 other films that they've even shown you what you're supposed to believe. Like, David is a superhero in Unbreakable, and Kevin is
he can climb on walls and
you've
be shot by a shotgun.
That was my in this movie, whenever they started suggesting the idea that they're not real, I'm like, but didn't we see? Did we not see that? Was that not? Like, right, I was wondering what they were going to do.
Right, that's been proven by now by what we've seen. But then, because it's Shyamalan, maybe you're like, maybe that was what the perception he wanted us to see for those, and now he's going to do the twist that they're not. And so I went along with that as well and started questioning with them.
And I think for the audience, that's an important idea, because I think sometimes we can do exactly what David and Kevin are tempted to do, and that's, we found something that we're able to do. We found some skill that we have or something that we're good at, and we get smacked in the face with something that makes us question that. And so we just we throw up our hand. Oh, I'm not good, I guess, or I'm not. And I think to call that into question. Like, don't just believe that you're terrible, but fight against that, I think.
Yeah, and I think if you look at these 3 movies by just their title, right? So Unbreakable is about the unbreakable man, where the first movie is about David Dunn's struggle to believe, like his struggle of believing in himself that he is who he is. Split showcases the struggle that the Horde has of, will the Beast come? Will he protect us? Will he be what we believe he is? And then by the end, they do believe, and they're like, we can put our faith and trust in him to protect us. And then you get to Glass, title character, and this is him coming to the end of his struggle with belief of what he put forward in the first movie, where you could say that his belief is solidified, and there's the payoff of, I know why I'm here, because I was here to find you. But then, of course, he's incarcerated, to where maybe this is truly him. Because at his death, when he's talking to his mother, he says, "I'm not an accident." Like he's like, "I'm not an accident," and he believes it with fervor there. That not only did he was put on this earth to find these people, but that he was put on this earth to show these people to the whole world, and in the process found out that there was a society actively working against these people, and he was able to get them out from under their thumb. Yeah. And so, you've got the three titles of these movies of these 3 characters struggling with belief in themselves. And then that plays into like identity as well. I think the theme of identity of who are you really, and the like outward forces telling you different, and not just the Clover society that then is put in this last film. There's in Split, there's his doctor who's trying to convince him. He's like, these are just, don't listen to those personalities telling you this beast exists. They're tempting you to get away off track and not stick with our program of getting you better. Same thing with David Dunn in his life of he completely disregarded who he was for many years until Elijah came and forced it upon him, and finding what is your identity, who are you really, is a big theme to this and has its conclusion, I think, in this film.
Yeah, well, and honestly, I'm glad you pointed it out, because at the end of Unbreakable, of course, Elijah says, now that I know who you are, I know who I am. And that's always been really, really significant. I feel like that sequence, because that then is when they reveal who Elijah actually is and what he's been doing. And yeah, this film, to me, felt like a really good payoff on those characters. And even part of the reason I was satisfied with their deaths, I mean, that from a practical sense, I mean, Bruce Willis is not coming back for another movie, so might as well kill him, right? But I was satisfied because in dying, he continues to serve his purpose. His death helps. Elijah at one point says that this is an origin story, and that his death is going to serve the purpose of inspiring more people. It's going to bring this into light where it's been being kept in darkness. And so, which
at first I thought, oh, is he saying this is the origin story of this dark Clover organization? Like, is that what he's saying here? But until you realize, no, it's the origin story of so many others who will come after because of what they're doing there today.
Yeah. So for me, that idea and that their deaths served a purpose, and then an identity, knowing who you are, gives you a kind of focus. And so by the, in David's arc, where at the beginning he knows who he is and he's got a purpose, and is whenever that's called into question, he flounders. He doesn't know what he's supposed to be doing. Is whenever he accepts it again and kind of returns to that he's able to be on point. And I think in life that's really important. It can be hard to find that purpose, and I think ultimately the people who are successful and the people who find out how to live in their skin are people who have found identity.
Yeah, and I think even I think there's a line in Unbreakable where Elijah says, "This is where." I think he's like, this is where it's not like a comic book, because real life is not a comic book. And that is very indicative of this entire universe, that these characters were never going to be superheroes and supervillains in the comic book sense.
Yeah.
David Dunn was never going to be this shining symbol of truth, justice in the American way, like Superman doing these glorious acts and getting the key to the city and all that. That was never going to happen. It's never been the focus of these films. The focus of the films has been about identity, about finding your purpose, and do you believe in yourself and what you truly have inside of you. And that, even though they die and people are be like that, they're wasting these characters. It's they get that catharsis, each one of them at the end of, I truly am who I believe I am.
Well, even in David's death, I loved that the way they worked in the reveal of Staple to that they make contact and he has a vision like that right there. That it confirms for him what he'd questioned.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the film also has something to say about systems of oppression that we have in our world. So there's the comic booky, Hydra organization, Clover in this, which is, has very fictionalized stuff to it. But I think it's also just like a commentary on society and culture of, there's things in our society and culture that push us to believe certain things about ourselves. And do we accept those and just go with the flow of what society tells us, or do we push back against that and say we are makers of ourselves and of our culture, and we don't have to necessarily go with the flow. Like my immediate thought is like photoshopped models in magazines, like, and saying, you know, this is your standard. This is the truth of beauty and what you should aspire to. Well, are you just going to take that and that be, you know, whatever is feeding you? Who is this coming? You know, who is that really coming from? It's coming from big business.
Yeah, there's
trying
some
to
marketing
sell.
agency that wants you to buy their product.
Right. It's they don't care what you think about yourself. They care that you buy whatever they're pushing on you.
Yeah.
And so we as a culture feed into that and allow that to come out of us as well. And so
and I feel like one thing that's really ugly in our society is that we a lot of times issues are turned into means to manipulate people into doing things that again have a very kind of like market driven end goal. You know, like you get people outraged about something not because you actually really want to fight the injustice, because you want your candidate to get elected, or because you want to drum up business for something, or
you'd rather have the people focusing on this area over here because you don't want them focusing on the what you're trying to do in the shadows over here.
And I think the challenge that it's easy for us to see all the ways everybody else is being manipulated, but it tends to be hiding right in front of us. And this was actually one of the things that I found really interesting about the design of the film. Ellie Staple, if you watch her wardrobe throughout the film, it actually, now, like a lot of people have pointed out, like, oh, well, she's wearing pinks and light colors and so like she has a motif in color the same way everybody else does. Except everybody else has a very consistent motif. Like David Dunn in this movie is always in green.
Right.
Or
the Horde in yellow and Glass in purple.
Always. Even if it's muted, it's always in that color. Ellie, that's not the case. Like she kind of fluctuates around and is wearing a few different things. But if you start noticing the background in a lot of those scenes, whatever she's wearing in the foreground of that shot will blend into the background of that shot, down to even like the color blocking sometimes. Like there was what made it stand out to me, there's a scene where she's wearing a dress that has, again, color blocking, and so the bottom portion of it is one color and the top portion is another, and the line is kind of like an awkward place in the dress. But whenever she was in one scene, that was the room she was in. Like there was a line in the background that she fit
right in.
And she's a chameleon. Like she's hiding in plain sight right in front of you as a part of this organization the entire time. And so again, for us, we need to be cautious of the ways that we personally are being manipulated. So it's easy for me to call attention to the way, you know, girls are being manipulated to believe certain things about beauty because of what they're seeing in magazines. Or it's easy for me to say that, you know, there are people who maybe even some of the situations that are being stirred up around like race and politics in our country, that there are people of certain groups that like, are you sure you're not just being manipulated so that people can get votes? It's easy for me to call those things out. What's harder for me to catch is whenever I'm being manipulated because, somebody's standing up for values and they're, you know, the man's trying to kick them down. And it's easy for me to be like, well, I want to give them my business now, you know, like,
right.
But I'm being manipulated. I'm playing into the same game that everybody else is falling for. Whenever and we have to be cautious of the point where we're being manipulated, because that's what we don't see.
Yeah, we can be manipulated in focusing on big manipulation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, which makes you your mind can even start getting melted thinking about like shady interest groups and government stuff and like what do we really know what's going on behind the veil, or are we or is what's really happening like 3 veils back?
Oh yeah.
And there's strings are getting pulled that we don't even know, and yeah, that's true. And then how do you stay true to yourself when all of that is in play, and strings that you may not realize are there are being pulled, and or you're allowing yourself to be pulled, to have that happen to you, and then how much of you is you, or just conditioning from those circumstances. And that's very deep and a very potent point, I think, that is hammered home at the end. If you hated the reveal of the secret society, and said that's just a dumb retcon that they're throwing in at the end, I think it has a point. It's not just there to be like, this is our Hydra, comic books. I think it has a more real reason pertaining to these characters and their arcs.
And if you align yourself with a big organization, and as you suggest, this organization probably thinks they're good and that they're doing right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe you're not, and maybe you need to question your allegiances to a lot of the things that, again, it's easy to call out when somebody else is doing it. It's easy for me to say, oh, there are people in the Republican Party who are, blindly supporting, almost racism, white nationalism, things like that. It's easy for me to see that and call it out, but it's a lot harder whenever I jump in behind an organization and I'm like, oh no, these guys are the good guys, and they're like, can't you hear how everything they're saying would make things better? Really? What? Who are they killing? Who are they? And I, it's
yeah. And and we see that in history, like hindsight being 2020 of, this person at this time had a lot of support, and people were very much behind this idea and really pushing for it. And then years later, we realize how horrific that was. I mean, crazy things from the past, like natural selection in humans
eugenics,
trying to where that was pushed as such a positive
this is
thing,
gonna make things better,
thing for the future. And it's like, how horrific is that idea to us now, where it was being marketed and supported in the past. And it's like, what things today that we're buying into will be viewed that way in the future.
Yeah, there's that idea of being on the right side or the wrong side of history. And I always find it funny whenever somebody uses that, because to me that it's a dangerous, because usually the only time anybody says that is when they think
they're on the right
side of history.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, first off, as far as we know, people in the future may be awful. Like, those people could be just as bad as people in the past were, or worse. And so, do you really? What if the worst people right now are actually on the right side of history? And then the inverse side again. You say that in a situation when you think you're being right and you're making this appeal to some broader group, and it's like, that's not what makes right. Like, that is not. Absolutely. Just because you're part of this organization that thinks metahumans would be bad for humanity does not make you right by being a part of a group. Just because there's more than one of you. If you
ever believe that you have the complete cornerstone on truth, then that's usually a pretty good indication of you not.
Well, and I would contend too that it's important for us to try to balance the intake of things. Like, if we exist in an echo chamber and we only hear one side of an issue all the time, we're bound to become absorbed by whatever that thing is. Instead, in the world of like science fiction fans, I think there are certain ideas that tend to pervade, and everybody kind of lines up with those. But to challenge yourself to listen to the other side, and not just your side's take of the other side. Like, that's not listening to the other side. But, legitimately, what are these people thinking? Because, again, there may be a position that you're not considering. There may be...
Or the reasons behind the thinking. Like, where... Not just, this is the line we're towing. Why are you like towing that line. What is the belief and the value behind that as to why you feel this way or think this way? Because if we get to those cores of understanding, then you understand your opponent or who you disagree with on how something particularly is fleshed out. And again, like echo chambers, you're seeing that even in this film of them throwing these three characters into the asylum of now we're putting them in this echo chamber of we're going to push this idea on them over and over and over again.
It's the only thing they'll hear, yeah. And
to where it's the only thing they'll hear and wear them down. I think that idea is very much in this film. I just don't see how people see this as a fumble at the end of the line. I feel like it is a solid touchdown.
It's a satisfying conclusion to a interesting film trilogy.
Yeah. Now, you say conclusion, and the last thing I want to leave off with is if this wasn't the end, let's say the money looks so good, and
because it does,
it's looking good now, and they're like, M. Night, baby, let's do another one, and he agrees. What would you want to see? Like where this ends off, the things it sets up. Like what would you want to see next?
I want to see Joseph Dunn as Nightwing, or taking on the mantle of the Overseer. That would be probably the step that I would want to take. So obviously he would have a very different approach because he doesn't necessarily have his dad's powers, but. He would be like a Bat character, like a Red Hood or a Nightwing, taking vigilante justice to the streets. Maybe coming back at the Clover organization for killing his father and having like some revenge. Oh yeah, I'd like that. See, I don't necessarily know that I want the revenge story. I guess I do want to see more of that organization. Like that's an interesting idea, and even in the Batman universe, in the New 52 iteration, there was the Court of Owls introduced, and that was super fun. Like that was such a fun arc in that comic, and I absolutely loved that. But
it's funny because people loved that, and the idea it put forward is that they've always been in Gotham, that they've been here since its foundation, and people are like, we love this.
But this Clover organization, I don't know about this. This is just garbage. This is rubbish.
After just 2 films, this is silly.
So for me, that I would be interested to see that. I guess for me, like again, seeing how Joseph would do the job of Overseer compared to how his dad David did, because David was brute force, like he would go in, and so I feel like Joseph would be smarter. He already is using technology and things like that, so how would he use that as a way to, like I see this being very like street level, and I mean plus the actor Spencer Treat Clark was fun. Like he was really strong in this.
I really enjoyed him
as a former child star too. Like it's one of those things where it's like
to come back and have that kind of performance. I enjoyed it. Now when I left the theater, not realizing that Shyamalan said this is it, I was speculating of what's next. Like where are they going to take these final characters now? And so I thought, he'll pick up the mantle of his dad. And I even wondered, I was like, what if Dunn's powers are more mystical? Because at the end when his dad is dead, he is like cradling him. I don't know if he's cradling him, but he has his hands or head on Dunn's chest. And I was like, what if that the power is passed from male to male in the Dunn line, that when one dies, the next one receives his strength and abilities. And I was like, what if that got transferred to his son? Which I think would actually answer the question of how Dunn was able to almost drown as a kid, because his dad was still alive and his dad had the strength, and maybe his dad didn't realize like him that he had it. And so, or maybe even Grandpa was still around then, and neither of them.
I mean, just the idea of it passing it a touch like that, you could go in a lot of different directions too. Like because there could have been a situation where Dunn acquired the gift from somewhere. Sort of a Shazam. Captain Marvel kind of
right. You could do a worthy, choosing this person to don these abilities.
And so Joseph would be the obvious inheritor of that, even if David isn't aware that that's what he's doing in his last minutes. But because his power is based on touch, that I could go with that too.
Yeah,
I would go with either of those. Either he acquires the powers and now has to use them, or he has no powers, but he continues the fight.
Right. Either way, I'd
totally...
love to see it. I'd love to see Anya Taylor-Joy come back and her, her abilities be solidified. Of these are powers. She can manipulate people through touch. She can get them to do what she wants. That's a fun power. To see somebody work that, especially if you're going up against this Clover organization.
That's
and you're
needing good ability to infiltration
infiltrate, get in places. You can use that against them. You could even bring Grandma Glass. Maybe she's the new Oracle, because maybe if they could teach her how to use the computer.
Did you see the computer she had in her house?
She had an app, like that old Apple.
Yeah, and it was, I want to say, it was like not even at a computer desk. Like it was on a random table next to her dining table, and she had to turn a chair around. It was like sitting on top of her old Victrola
phone table, and where she kept her ashtray or something like that.
Well, there also the alternate side of that, where you see a new crop of superheroes in this universe.
Yeah.
I like if you can maintain the kind of power set that we've seen so far, where everything needs to be something that's real but just heightened a little bit. I think that would be really interesting. I feel like so let's scrap the Oracle idea for Mrs. Price. And what if now, because of that incident being so public, those three are untouchable, right? Because if something were to happen to them, people would be like, they're killing off their family members now, or even Anya Taylor-Joy, they're killing her off, and that would draw too much attention. So they're even more untouchable. So if more superheroes are coming out of the woodworks, maybe she could be like a motherly role to them, fulfilling that open space that her son is now gone, and she's the new Professor X.
Yeah, she's like a Professor X, and this was the purpose for her son's life, and so she is shepherding in these new young children into,
and then she has to deliver them to Canada.
Yeah. While she's taking serum to get jacked up and fight people. I want to see that movie.
I do wonder, given the rules of Unbreakable, what superpowers could you do in this universe? Because there are certain things that I feel like you could not do.
Yeah, like flight seems out of the question.
I mean, even a lot of your energy-based powers, where you're shooting things, or
it basically can't be seen. Everything that they do is unseen. So yeah, it would have to be.
I mean, you could definitely do something with vision, where somebody is able to see really far, or
you could do mystical stuff like
you already said. Daredevil that kind of character would fit.
Right, because that's a heightened senses. Anything where something normal can be extraordinary. I was racking my brain. I was coming up with people like Silver Surfer. I was like, just someone who's awesome at surfing. I don't know what it could be.
Yeah,
but
somebody who throws up acid that's even stronger than normal human acid that eats through everything.
There you go.
That's terrible. That's the dumbest idea ever.
I think that was in The Incredibles too. I think that old man.
It was. His power was reflux. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you could do things like speed and things like that too, but again, it wouldn't be
speed
crazy
would
super
be a good
speed.
one.
Except, what do you do with it, especially if it's not to Dash or the Flash or Quicksilver level?
Wait, maybe Usain Bolt is one of these.
He's a super, but it's just what are you going to do? I guess I'll just run in races. I guess. I don't I don't know what else I'm going to use that power for. Ooh, I've got one. What if you could see dead people?
There you go. But then with Bruce Willis again?
Oh, that's, yeah. It all breaks down.
Yeah. Unless that's...
No, it's broken.
Yeah.
Cole is not a super in the Unbreakable universe yet.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how he could be the same.
Now,
David Dunn as well.
It would be really weird. Okay, so since the three have now died, especially David and Elijah, Cole could still commune with them. You know, like if that character came back, but it would be really weird that he's seeing another ghost of Bruce Willis.
Yeah, that would break down. Yeah. But yeah, bring back another child star, Haley Joel Osment. Mm-hmm. He's been doing some stuff lately.
Yeah, like getting DUIs and stuff.
Oh, has he?
I think. Last I heard, he was in the news for something like that. I mean, like I feel like it's sad anytime a child star does anything.
He's in that Hulu show,
he?
Future Man. It's a Seth Rogen sci-fi.
Well, there you go.
Perfect.
Sounds like a winner already.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that is going to be the end of our discussion on Glass. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you absolutely still hate this movie, let us know.
Yeah, I would be interested to talk to a real person and not just read reviews that are negative. Like, I would love to know the perspective of someone.
Yeah, I threw it out there on social media. I'm like, hey, if you hated this movie, like, talk to us, like, comment. And I just got a bunch of likes. And I'm like, does that mean
you hate it?
Does that mean you're like, yeah, I'm with you, I hate that movie, or do you like it, or do you just like that this is a discussion? And then I got one person giving their opinions on it, but even they didn't hate it. They're like, I've got a few issues with it, but
yeah, I mean that's my
overall
thing.
I still liked it.
It's not the best movie ever. It's a good movie.
Yeah, it's definitely worth rewatching.
Oh, sure.
I would say that. There's plenty of movies that are like, it's not the greatest, it's not the worst. I'd never really care to see it again. Whereas this, I feel like I could definitely rewatch it several times.
Because of the scene on the train, I would love to get these three movies and recut them so that like all three stories are being told concurrently. Somehow, like I think that would be really interesting. So you get introduced to the whole idea of them being incarcerated really early, and you're getting flashbacks of all of their individual stories, and so you're wondering like, why is Elijah in here, and why I just think it would be interesting.
Oh yeah,
an interesting thought experiment to play with editing in this.
Yeah, some fan will absolutely do that. We'll
take up the mantle. We'll.
Yeah, well,
I mean, I'll be honest, I may be that fan who does that, and it's just out of pure curiosity. Like, how would this...
It'll be your passion project over many years. Yeah. Well, power to you, man. That sounds like a nightmare to me, but
so
I will definitely watch it.
So if our next episode is going to be Snowpiercer, do we actually need to do an introduction since we did that last time?
Yeah, we'll probably do like a, hey, remember from last time where we said we were gonna do this? Yeah, we're actually gonna do this now. Okay. So yeah, our next episode we will be tackling Snowpiercer, the post-apocalyptic future on a train, and yeah, I'm excited. I'm still excited to get into that, even though we kicked it to the curb for this episode.
We were playing about having seen it. I still have not watched this movie.
You gotta watch it.
Yeah, I know I do. I gotta find it.
Oh, you don't have. I'll let you rent it or rent it. It'll be $3 a day. Make sure you return it after 3 days, or you have to buy it from me.
Do I need to rewind the disc?
No, I'll let you borrow it. I've got it on Blu-ray.
No, okay, nice. That'd be great.
So yeah, check that out, everyone, and watch Snowpiercer before our next one. And thank you for joining us on this episode.
As always, thank you so much for being with us on the Dead Padawans Society. We appreciate your support and feedback. Be sure to leave a comment on our social media or shoot us an email at deadpadawansociety@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks again, everyone. May the force be with you.
And live long and prosper.